In a world where hustle culture collides with wellness warnings and workplace demands keep evolving, how do we stay sharp without burning out? How do we navigate the endless stream of wellness trends while actually getting results? This is the Work and Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Ange Davis. Drawing from my own journey of wins, stumbles, and honest revelations, I'll be bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations with experts and inspiring guests who've been there, lived it, and found a better way. Together, we'll cut through the noise and workshop what it really means to be well in today's workplace. No more choosing between success and sanity. No more sacrificing health for achievement. Whether you're struggling with burnout, searching for purpose, or simply ready to work smarter, not harder, you're in the right place. This is real talk about real solutions for real people. Let's get into it. Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here with me again today. Today, we are going to be talking about how to escape the comparison trap. I'm sure I'm not alone in the fact that I have definitely caught myself scrolling through social media, seeing everyone's highlight reel at this time of the year and wondering, should I be doing more? Have I achieved enough this year? Or maybe you're reflecting on your career and instead of celebrating your wins that you've had this year, you're stuck comparing yourself to where someone else is, one of your colleagues is. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. We are all more prone to comparison at this time of year. It's the prime season for comparison. Social media has all of the highlight reels on it. Year-end performance reviews are in. People are sharing their holiday plans. Everything just seems designed to make us feel like we are not measuring up. But here's the thing, comparison is not only natural, it's a part of how our brain works. And in understanding that comparison is a very normal thing and a normal part of our brain that was designed from an evolutionary perspective, it can help us understand how to reframe it. In today's episode, we're going to unpack the psychology of comparison. I'll share some personal experiences of where I've experienced comparison, and then I'm going to share with you some practical tools on how to thrive in your career and well-being without falling into the comparison trap. Let's look at the psychology of comparison. There's a theory called social comparison theory that was developed by psychologist Leon Festinger in 1952. And this theory suggests that we evaluate ourselves based on how we stack up against others. The behavior is evolutionary. It helps us understand where we fit within a group and what's needed to survive or succeed in that group. The problem is, in our modern world, we're constantly exposed to curated, idealized versions of other people's lives, especially on social media or LinkedIn. And this is where it can become a real challenge or a hindrance to us because we're not seeing every part of the reality of someone's life. We are seeing the highlight reel. Even on LinkedIn, you're seeing that curated feed of role after role after role, but you're not seeing the challenges or trials and tribulations that person has gone through to get to each next level of their career. There are two types of comparison that I wanted to share. The first one is upward comparison, and that's where we compare ourselves to someone we perceive as better or more successful. An example of this is seeing a colleague get a promotion or a friend buy their dream home. And the psychological impact of upward comparison can motivate us for growth if it's balanced with self-compassion, but it often leads to envy or feelings of inadequacy. The second type of comparison is downward comparison, and that's where we compare ourselves to someone in a less fortunate or less successful position. An example can be feeling relief when someone else makes a mistake at work. And the psychological impact of that can foster gratitude in the positive sense, but it can also lead to complacency and a lack of empathy as well. So there's positive and negative to both upward and downward comparison. This time of year can drive both types of comparison. From a social media perspective, everyone is posting their highlight reels. People post holidays, promotions, there's a lot of reflection on achievements, which is great. I think it's really important for us to reflect on our achievements, but sometimes these little snapshots can distort reality, and they make us forget that the struggles and the failures that led to those achievements often get left out in reflections and highlight reels. There's a time at the moment for annual reflections. It's end of year. People often do an end of year performance review, and people set personal goals. And sometimes that can trigger reflection, not just on what has been accomplished, but it can also trigger reflection on what hasn't been accomplished. And so sometimes that leads to comparison and feelings of inadequacy as well. There's also seasonal pressures at this time of year. There's gift giving, family gatherings, and holiday planning, and that can heighten feelings of financial or personal inadequacy at this time of year. And all of this can have an impact on your career and your well-being. From a career perspective, over-comparing can lead to burnout as we push ourselves to work harder to match other people's achievements. And sometimes I think what actually happens when we do this is we lose sight of our own goals because we are seeing other people achieving things and we think that we need to achieve those same things. So it's a time where we can forget what our own goals are because we're seeing what other people have achieved, and sometimes it can put us off track. It can create decision paralysis where the fear of not being good enough can stop us from taking risks as well, worrying that if we give it a go, we might not achieve what that other person achieved. And sometimes that just creates complete paralysis in us taking action. From a well-being perspective, chronic comparison fuels stress, anxiety, and it can lower self-esteem. Over time, that can erode gratitude and derail our focus on our personal goals. I have certainly found that I have fallen into the comparison trap from time to time. It has particularly been relevant when I started my own business. It was in a realm that I was relatively new to, and I was creating an entirely new network of people who were doing what I was doing as compared to corporate, where I was very familiar with my environment. And I found myself looking at what these other people were doing and thinking, why haven't I done that yet? I thought to myself, I'm not going to be able to get there. How have they gotten there? How are they doing that? And I had forgotten that these people have been doing this for 10 plus years, and I was in my first year of business. And I think it's really difficult sometimes to take a step back and remember that everyone has their own journey, everyone has their own process, and that it's okay to look to these people for inspiration. But just remember that it is your own journey in your career, in your business, in your personal life as well. I wanted to touch on some tips on how to avoid the negative comparison trap. Here are some practical tips that you can use to combat falling into that trap, particularly at this time of year. The first one is recognizing your triggers. Keep a journal or use some mindfulness techniques to note down when and why you're comparing. Are you noticing that there are certain things that really trigger you to feel that comparison? Is it in relation to personal things? Is it in relation to business? You might even just want to write it in the notes section of your phone so that when you look back, you're able to see the things that are sort of triggering you, and then you can do either personal work on that, or you can simply unfollow people who are posting a lot of that content, or spend time away from the people who are sharing a lot of that for the moment if that's triggering you. The second one is limit social media exposure. It is something that I think we can all do. Set time boundaries for scrolling or use apps that prevent your usage from going over a certain limit. I know I share the Opal app a lot. That's the one that I use. And it means that I'm just not wasting my time scrolling and spending so much time on social media. The average person spends 2.5 hours a day scrolling social media. So it is no wonder that we are getting into a comparison trap and seeing all of these wonderful things that are happening that are not making us feel great. The third one is focus on personal growth. Create a list of 3 to 5 goals that you might be working towards. You might already know what these are. Every time comparison strikes, revisit this list and ground yourself back into your own goals and your own journey. It's a really good way to bring yourself out of comparing yourself, because often I feel like we compare ourselves when it's not even the journey that we want. It's just something that we sort of fed into our algorithm of believing that we want. If possible, find inspiration rather than envy. Turn that upward comparison into curiosity around what you can learn from that person. Whether it's in your career or personally, is there something that they've done or that they share that you might be able to learn that you could apply to your own goals? And the final one is celebrate your wins at the end of every week. And then if you're feeling like you're in that comparison trap, go back and look at what wins you've written down and remind yourself that you are absolutely progressing and not feeling like you're sitting stagnant. I wanted to share a really good book on this topic. It's called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And this book helps to shift the focus from comparing yourself to others or an idealized future self, which is the gap, to celebrating how far you come, which is the gain. It provides really practical strategies on reframing success, and it helps you measure progress against your own journey rather than external standards. And I find that doing that can be hugely helpful in stopping us from feeling like we are not where we're supposed to be, because you absolutely are. We are all exactly where we are supposed to be at this moment in time. In closing, I wanted to remind you not to compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Or, like I was talking about before, my year 1 in business to someone else's year 10 in business. Just remember, there is a journey to get to everywhere. Everyone's journey is unique. You're exactly where you need to be right now, and focus on writing your own story one chapter at a time, and trust that your growth is really unfolding at the perfect pace. And that can be a really nice reminder if you get caught in that comparison trap of seeing what other people are sharing this time of year. Your success and well-being is ultimately grounded in your unique journey. And as you go along that journey, you will learn things that contribute to your growth. So the journey is really important. I know it sounds really cheesy to say, but the journey is just as important as the destination. And it's certainly something I've learned over the past year. Progress really isn't about being better than others or achieving what others are achieving, but it's really about being better than you were yesterday and working towards your own goals. So hopefully those things have helped you ground back into yourself, your own goals, and serve as a reminder for this time of year when people are sharing their highlight reels, to remind yourself to compare yourself against where you were last year, what you've achieved since last year, and then set those goals for the year ahead. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining me on Work and Wellness. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, someone in your network might need to hear this too. Share it with a colleague or friend who could use these insights. I'd love to keep the conversation going, so find us on Instagram at Mind Your Grit, where we share daily tips and continue these discussions. And if you found value in today's episode, please take time to rate and review the show. It makes such a huge difference and helps other people discover conversations they might really need. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Each week, we're building a community of people who believe that success and well-being go hand in hand. You can find the notes, resources, and links from today's episode at mindyourgrit.com. This is Work and Wellness with Ange Davis, Your work matters, your wellness matters, and this is where it all comes together. See you next week.